Welcome, everyone. My name is David Elwood, and I'm especially pleased to see you here on, frankly, one of the lovely evenings of the year. And so it's a lovely evening outside, but it's going to be even more inspirational inside. And this is the very first day of classes here at the Kennedy School and throughout Harvard. And so it's especially important that we start by celebrating the most important value that we all share here at the school, and it's really fundamentally about making the world a better place. But instead of me talking about that, I would also like to mention that this is also, we're celebrating this year, our 75th anniversary as this school. Now, in fairness, we were not called the Kennedy School 75 years ago, but we're always about making the world better and advancing the public service. We're here today to talk about our future, much more than our past. But we have with us four people that are graduates of the Kennedy School and who are very much about shaping the future, not only for this nation, but for the world, and who are fundamentally about thinking about something larger than themselves. And therefore, we're very, very proud to have them with us. Let me very briefly introduce each of them. You have short bios of them in the program, and frankly, you're much more interested in hearing from them. Next, I want to talk about Pam Kingpetcharat. She is the Chief Administrative Officer for Human Rights First. And Pam, in much the way that that Secretary Donovan, I'm sorry, Sean, I'll try my best. We're going to try and be on a first-name basis here, but I worked for a secretary, and it's hard.
I'll call you Dean if you don't.
And I'll be good. But she has had a very diverse career. She was a graduate of this school back in 2005, an MPID program, and she has, throughout her life, done a series of different kinds of activities. She, for example, has worked for the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, Accenture, Merrill Lynch, the Peace Corps in Ghana, Dahlberg Global Development Advisors, and now she's the COO of Chief Administrative Officer of Human Rights First, an organization that really started as Lawyers for Human Rights and works very hard to trying to take advantage of the legal frameworks that countries already have around the world and other kinds of factors. For example, they brought together a whole group of retired generals to support sets of issues around human rights and the likes. It's terrific to have her here. Obviously, we have four very diverse, very exceptional human beings here. And so with that, I want to start. I'll just go right down the group here, but hopefully we'll have some discussion and then time for Q&A. And I guess I'm kind of interested in two kinds of things, which is what gets you up in the morning? Why do you get up and not just hide your head under the covers? Because frankly, some days it feels that way right now. And frankly, how did you end up here anyway? So that's terrific. Let me now turn to Pam. And Pam, again, what gets you up in the morning and how did you get to where you have to get up anyway?
I think it's very similar actually to the response already given, which is, for me, it was the pursuit of one question, actually, and that is, how do countries and how do people develop? And that's actually taken me from the Fed to Merrill to Accenture, and I never, ever would have thought that I would have ended up in a nonprofit management role. I actually, for a long period of time, thought, as I worked at Merrill and Accenture, this is really interesting. It's very intellectually challenging. Then I hit a wall where I felt like I was solving the same problems over and over again. And I could actually answer this question in two very distinct ways. One way where if you look at my history, you pull up from your past in the way that somebody else describes your history. My parents learned English from a Peace Corps volunteer. I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I paid back. I've done my time in public service, and I've also done my time in the private sector world, and I've always felt a translator between the two. And then if you look at where my work leads me today, I continue to perform translation services from the operations end, making sure that Human Rights First can achieve its ultimate mission, which is to reframe the role of human rights in everything that we do, from law and security to essentially refugee protection. So a lot of what I do today is about, intellectually for me, the challenge. This is really hard because as a trained economist, I look at this and, you know, I was naive enough to come to the Kennedy School and go, well, the facts all say that you should make this choice. Why doesn't everybody just make that choice? Why can't everybody see the facts? And what you learn from the Kennedy School and what you learn from real life is that people have emotions, and and fundamentally, change only happens if people all agree to it. So what's the difference between HBS and the Kennedy School? The Kennedy School really focuses on stakeholder management, on really not only recognizing the way people feel about their condition, but helping them move past that to solve the problem. And so what I do today is really a reflection of that, is moving past being a consultant and doing development from a hands-off perspective to having skin in the game, and helping manage an organization that helps to really make human rights kind of that foundational piece before rule of law, before institutions, before development happens. So for me, it's really a theory of change.
Now, you're obviously deeply committed to all this, and I love the story about your parents. This was in Thailand where they were
Exactly.
trained, and you yourself were Peace Corps volunteer later?
I was.
Yeah, that's a wonderful circle. But you are also in a role right now that's you're absolutely one of the most essential, maybe the most essential roles in an organization, which is to really make it run, to manage it, to be the chief administrative officer and so forth. But I'll bet there are some people in the audience thinking, well, I'd like to be the head, or I'd like to be on the ground, or I'd like to, you know, and yet, how do you feel like you miss, just as Sean was talking about, you know, getting out and seeing the folks, as it were? Do you get a chance to do that? How do you keep I guess another way to put this is, you're there because you really fundamentally want to change things. Can you find the excitement and the energy and so forth, even as you're running the organization?
Absolutely. I'll take for example, the fact the organization is really set to double in the next 5 years really makes this a challenge, because in any well-run system, if all the processes and all the things aren't in place, then people can't all be focused on the ultimate goal, because they're too busy trying to make sure that this penny went over here and this penny went over there. What I'd like what this allows me to do is make sure that as an institution, we agree on what the rules of the game are. And once we agree, then it allows all of us to focus on the end goal. And it also allows me, because where we're headed as an organization is really into areas of internet freedom and business and human rights. And so, you know, once, and even in the nick of things, for example, we've got staff members in Indonesia today and in places like Egypt. I need to make sure that they're okay, that the relationships are developed. We're also looking at developing relationships with the Kennedy School and other partners that could help us advance our work. So just because you know, it seems kind of nitty-gritty, I'm in the details, I'm also in the details on the really great things too. So being an executive team member allows me that freedom to not only make decisions and help operate and make sure that the organization runs as an institution that will be there for the next 30 years to come, but also get a little bit of the interesting work in there with the human rights work on the ground.
But I just think, you know, any organization, whether it's the Kennedy School, which I see more directly, or Human Rights Watch or anything else, you know, the truth is the really important work isn't just describing what the vision is. It's doing it. It's making it happen. And that's just absolutely vital. And that really is real leadership. That is, you know, that's really what it's all about.
And I think that the commonality amongst all the panel members is that we're there to build the institutions in which we work. And leaving that as the core, you know, even when we leave, that matters, and that not only does it matter, but it consistently treats people with fairness and with dignity. I think it's critical, and people oftentimes don't, unfortunately, see public service as building institutions, but that's kind of core what it is.
I am intrigued by, I mean, obviously this moral authority is really very important, and you're very wise to use it, but obviously it needs to be used for something. Mm-hmm. And how have you, as a group of survivors, or you as an individual a person in that setting, how have you figured out how to use that effectively and where to put it, and to bring people to the table who themselves must be as diverse as any group of folks about, get tough, help understand, whatever the different points of view are. How do you, again, it's not partisanship, but it's just as emotional and it's just as deep, much more so. That's right. And so, how do you use that in a really effective way?
Well,
Pam?
I think that I'll actually build on all of this, and I would say that change is always hard, and everybody's all up for change until they have to make a sacrifice. And I think the critical thing is, especially with what you're seeing with the bipartisanship, kind of the division growing and growing, the system is set up to reward that. And so in order to change the system, you have to reframe the conversations that people have. And fundamentally, it comes from whether or not you sit in a position of being optimistic or pessimistic about what people want out of their lives. I think that I sit eternally in the optimistic zone, mainly because if I didn't live that way, I think that we've had an earthquake, we've had a hurricane, come on. I think if you don't sit from the optimistic zone, then you wouldn't see the fact that fundamentally people want really the same thing, and what we argue about is how to get there. And what the training and the toolkit here teaches you is how to surface and make more transparent those conversations so that people can come and bridge the divide. Just because we don't agree on exactly how to get there doesn't mean that we can't all get to the same goal. And so I think a lot of what my organization tries to do is to reframe the conversation. When did human rights become, or when did religion become all Republican, or human rights become all left? It seems a little ridiculous in this day and age that certain things are owned by political parties when these conversations really are core conversations that should be had in the context of, frankly, a lot of change that the whole world is undergoing. So I think the answer to that question is that this is really change management, and if you understand how people make their decisions, and it's not based on an economic pros-con list. It's actually, people make decisions based on who they think they are, right? They vote based on who they think they are. And once you get that, you can have a conversation about what that looks like and how we can get there.
My last question is this. You all were here at the Kennedy School. You took a variety of things and so forth. What's one word of advice that you wish you'd heard, or having been here for a group of people that are, some of them are just at the start of their journey, or at least at the start of their last year in some cases, what word of advice would you have for your Kennedy School part of your experience?
Yeah, I think my advice would be very similar, which is to be fearless. You're here for 2 years. You're paying for it in many more ways than just money. Your classmates are probably the best diamonds in the rough that you can learn from. Figure out what you think, how you think the world works, and challenge your own thought process on that. And don't be afraid to disagree with your professors. They actually like that. As I've learned, because that's actually how I got my job offer from Dalberg, was Danny Roderick sent my resume in. Surprised the heck out of me, because I disagreed with them a lot in class. Disagree with your professors, disagree with your classmates, get to know them. I don't really spend any time thinking about the problem sets I did or didn't complete. I do actually spend a lot of time talking to my MPAID classmates who ended up Minister of Finance of Chile and so forth and so on about their kids. So really, within these walls, there are people who are sitting right next to you. Get to know them and keep in touch with them. And through them, figure out what you think about how the world works so that by the time you get out of here in the next 2 years, you have a story that you can tell that will not only land you the job, but will put you in a position that will help make a difference.
All right, now the floor is now open. What we'd like you to do is line up at the microphones if you have a question. And let me just describe what a good question is at the Kennedy School. There are microphones here, although there's a photographer in front, he'll move. Here, and here. And what a good question for the Kennedy School has 3 qualities. First, you identify yourself. Second, you have one thought, Okay? And third, it ends with a question mark. So with that, please come to the microphone and we'll begin. And I'll just go around kind of in order. Start right over here.
Hi, my name is Parvati Sandesh Kumar. I'm a second-year student at the Kennedy School here. Because the world's most challenging problems require us to increasingly ask what we can do together, I wanted to ask you about how you foster collaboration in the work that you do.
Things like your class on the art of communication actually covers some of this, which is in order to actually create that relationship, you have to begin with relatedness. And that means that sometimes as a person, you have to just really be honest and say, you know, I really messed up. I'm sorry. Sometimes it's coming clean. Sometimes it's admitting you're human and saying, oh, we disagree on this front or that front. But first and foremost, it's to establish that relatedness and that relationship. And then you can begin bringing together coalitions of other people that say, oh, you know, this person has this and this person has that. Oh, did you know that you guys had this in common? And it really, it's a lot of building, and it's a lot of, it actually requires a lot of personal, for me at least, it takes a lot of effort on my part, at least, from a personal perspective, because it really requires me to be open in order to build those relationships. But if you don't do it, there's no way you can build coalitions of people who are very far apart together.
Joe?
Hi, my name is Divya Dar. I'm from the MPP program. I've also got the title of being the shortest person in the Kennedy School. So, so I just had a question for Carrie. Something you said about moral authority and leadership.
It's a question. That's all. It's okay if you're short. You can make it through the Kennedy School at 4'10 3/4. So
yes, thank you.
Even if your feet don't reach the floor.
I wanted to ask about leadership and moral authority, and something that Pam said, to challenge and disagree. So this is just something I want to clear up with you. So if you're going to assume that you can have moral authority in leadership, I would assume that you would create people who promote your cause and support you, and people who challenge your cause. And what I'm wondering is there a role in leadership if you want to end up with the goal that you want, which is more along the lines of an inquirer? So you're trying to enable people to discover their own truths. So instead of coming from a moral authority viewpoint, you come from an inquirer viewpoint as a leader. So I just wanted to ask you about that.
If there's anything that this school teaches you about definition, it's that leadership, that definition is not what you think it is. When you walk through those doors, you think, and maybe it's just me, but I thought, oh, someone's the leader, as in grade school, you know, like whenever someone stood up and they led the group and everyone followed. Leadership comes in as many types and forms and shades as you see people in this room. And every person, I myself felt really uncomfortable with the title of being a leader. I saw myself more as a facilitator and much more as a collaborator, someone who brought. But that's a form of leadership as well. And there's not going to be only one type of leader in any situation. Take the leadership class. You'll definitely learn this. If it doesn't change your view on leadership, I don't think you can get your money back, but you could come and talk to me. But I'll tell you that word is a very, very, and we're at a time in the world where hopefully that word is changing, and we're seeing it change and adapt. But you know, traditionally that word was really only one way, and I would say that there's many different forms.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for talking with us today. My name is Diana Lopez. I'm a first-year PhD student in health policy, and I'm also a registered nurse. And I have a dream to one day become the Secretary of Health and Human Services, which is one of the reasons why I came to Harvard. And I have another dream, which is to be a mother and to eventually get married and eventually have kids. And I guess my question to you all is, was there ever a time in your career where you felt sort of a push and pull between your familial self and your professional self? And doing public service, I'm sure it entails a ton of time and a ton of commitment around the clock. And so my question to you is, can you please give me some words of wisdom regarding just reducing my anxiety about eventually becoming a mother as well as a public servant?
I I think I'd add to that, let go of perfect. It's never going to happen. Because I've actually literally just been there. I logged about 60,000 miles, airline miles last year alone. This year is a lot better, despite the earthquake and hurricane. My life has gotten better because I've prioritized, which is the second recommendation, is just to make sure you have your priorities straight. I always think through, who's going to be at my funeral. It's a horrible thing to think through, but who's going to be at my funeral, and that's how it's going to matter. Sometimes the decisions you make are really just a drop in a bucket of many decisions you're going to make. So is this one of the things that you're going to, is this going to turn the tables, turn the tide? And then the last one is really to not think about things that aren't going to happen immediately. I mean, you're just starting, or maybe you're just kind of embarking upon a path. Focus on that path. Focus on what's right in front of you. Don't worry about things that haven't happened yet. When you get there, you'll know what to decide, because you'll know who you are. So just try not to worry about things that you do need to plan somewhat, but you don't need to plan so much so that you've squeezed all of the joy and happiness out of your life. There are some things that you can make a decision when it comes.
My name is Blake Hyatt. I'm a first-year student in the Master's in Public Policy program. You guys had touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm wondering if you have any advice for the folks in this room about how to maintain momentum through failure. So when you don't achieve an objective, you can't always promise that you're going to pull something off. There's politics involved. There's a lot of other things involved that you can't necessarily make relationships get over it. How do you keep your folks motivated so that you can keep on achieving whatever goals you have set ahead that might be even harder than what it is that you just failed on?
So actually I do very similar things just on a personal and a big picture. I kind of allow myself a little bit of time to grieve whatever path I thought that I lost, whatever image or vision I had. And oftentimes with my teams, I do the same. We'll get in a room and I'll just say, you know what, you've got about 5-10 minutes. Want to hear it. And just let everyone get it all out. Oh, doesn't that suck? Isn't that horrible? Doesn't that person, they just don't get it. And just let everybody really get it all out. And then you refocus, right? You're going to fall. And in fact, sometimes I probably have developed, probably due to my Peace Corps years, a very odd sense of humor about failure, because sometimes you find it really funny that things were, if you look back, you start to realize how inevitable it was and you just didn't see it because you weren't listening. And so it's really important to kind of allow yourself to go through whatever emotional trauma that you went through and let people around you feel that, and then pick yourself back up and go, okay, where do we need to go? What happened? What did we not see that we could have seen? How can we do this differently? It's worked for me both personally and on a professional basis, just because I've seen my teams recover very well from it. But sometimes you have to guide people through that process, because if you don't acknowledge that people had a vision and they thought everything was going to go well, then you're not going to acknowledge the fact that that's now gone away and you have to replace it with something else.
Well, this has just been a terrific panel, and on all these issues,